Val Bradley is a nationally recognized expert in the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities. Nearly 50 years ago, Val founded Human Services Research Institute, and in 1997, she co-founded National Core Indicators. In honor of Women's History Month, we hear from our very own history maker in her own words.
I started out in this field working for the California legislature as a staff person. And the man I worked for was a guy named Art Bolton. And he was a real visionary. And while I was working with Art, we facilitated the passage of some very important legislation, including civil commitment reform and the development of something called the Lanterman Act, which really established the community ID system in California. So he was a man ahead of his time, and really responsible for making California one of the first states to really have statutory foundation for the community system. So he was very important to me. But also people like Elizabeth Boggs, who really was one of the primary movers of the Developmental Disabilities Act. She was an extraordinary woman. And she stood about 6 feet tall. So she was a formidable human. She was a mom of a man with pretty severe disabilities, who at that time was living in an institution. But she also just saw over the next mountain. You know, she knew what needed to happen to create a better future. And then Gunnar Dibwad, who so he was emerita professor at Brandeis University, but he was the first executive director of the ARC in the 50s. He was on the President's Committee on Mental Retardation back then, and was just a wonderfully warm, empathetic man who, again, you know, envisioned the family support movement and other important moves to reform the system of services. So I would say those three had a big impact on me. National Core Indicators. It's just extraordinary to me that, you know, for the small, hardy group of people that got around the table back in the 90s, to think about how to measure progress in the field of ID, that it's now in 49 states and the District of Columbia, and is the biggest database on the experiences of people receiving services in the world. I think finding and making some lifelong friends, both in the field and outside the field. My friend Ruth Luckison, who, you know, I made a friend. You rarely make friends later in life. Usually the friends you make are the ones you knew in your teens, in your 20s. And also a dear friend, Nina Totenberg, who I got to know when I was single and living in DC. So it's really having the both collegial friends and also close friends who are not part of the field that it brings me a good deal of joy to know that there are women around the country who I can call at a moment's notice and they would understand and sympathize and support me.
That's wonderful.
Trust yourself. Know what your strengths are and what they're not. Make sure to have people around you who complement you, who have the strengths that you don't have, and understand the importance of having a team that comes together with various gifts that all contribute to a successful whole. The older you get, the more you realize that nothing is ever final. The gains that we made, certainly institutions have closed, but you've got to be vigilant continually with any kind of reform. because there are always forces that will drag it back. You need to continue the pressure on the system. You can't give up, because once you do, it's like, pushing water out. Once you take away the dam, the water comes right back in again. So that's the one lesson I think I've learned.